So many people, say, how do you succeed in life? And so many people say giving. Well, giving is something that actually works so much is because you're quieting down the part of you that is ego-based and bringing up the part of you that's soul-based, and it's actually good for your health at the same time. So if we can give generously without expecting anything in return, we start to build that trust with other people.
This is the Home of Health Span podcast, where we profile health and wellness role models, sharing their stories and the tools, practices, and routines they use to live a lively life. Dr. V, it is wonderful to see you. How are you doing today?
I am doing beautiful. Thank you so much for having me.
And I'm appreciative of the way we connected. It was actually, I don't know if you know this, I was starting, as I was getting into the space, Health Span Hacks series that I post on Mondays on Instagram and LinkedIn. I was like, I wonder if anybody else has used this hashtag, and came across you. I think you were the only other person that did, and came across your events that you were putting on. It was absolutely phenomenal, and became acquainted with your work. And so reached out, and I'm so happy you responded. We got to actually connect, and that we can share all your wisdom with our listeners today. So thank you.
You're very welcome. The mission that you have out in the world is beautiful. And when I started to study you and your work, especially your pillars, I was thinking, wow, we are on the same wavelength. We are a brother elevating humanity together.
That is the dream. And, it takes a collective effort. And so I'm so happy for the work you do and that we can do it together. So before we jump in to all the work you do and kind of your journey there, how would you describe yourself or define yourself?
Well, I am a lively physician, thought leader, influencer, what some people might call me, but I think I like to rest on, I am a lively human being that cares so much for humanity, that just wants to do my part in the things that I've learned to help humanity elevate together.
That's beautiful. And I want to start with that physician piece, right? Because, when we talk about health, especially in modern society, so much of it is an absence of sickness, an absence of disease or treating sickness. And that's kind of how the education system's set up. I've recently came across someone who was saying it in med school, they got a total of 2 hours on nutrition. And when you think about pillars of health, that's what you get in nutrition. And you were not the prototypical, okay, here's what I learned, and I'm just going to write scripts, and that's what it is, come in every 12 months. You look at health in an entirely different, and I think personally correct way. And I'm curious, what was your path to that? How did you come to that, given going through the traditional med school system?
I would have probably believed everything that I've learned throughout my education system if it didn't fail me. Because I was at a place 7-10 years ago where I was overweight, I was diabetic, I had high blood pressure, yet I was the chief of interventional radiology at my hospital. I looked in front of the mirror at mornings and just realized I was fatigued, I was tired. Not only did I have chronic disease, I was, again, diabetic and had high blood pressure. And I knew the fate of how it would turn out was I was going to end up in my own operating room table. And so that allowed me to just ask myself, what is missing here? And how I living my life really contributing to this? And I didn't know what moves to make initially, but I just took a pause in full-time medicine. I dove deep into kind of personal development. I did an additional fellowship. I trusted more science. So I did a fellowship in anti-aging, regenerative medicine, and longevity medicine. And so much of what I learned there was how we live our life can potentially be medicine. A lot of it was lifestyle. And in a very short period of time, I reversed all my chronic conditions. And as I dug deeper in the rabbit hole of personal development and spirituality, I started to understand that how I was looking at life, my lens of feeling like I was not worthy, not enough, led me to live a life in ego, survival, fear mode. And I was unconsciously giving my cells the signals of danger in my body, which, as we know now in epigenetics, when we get those signals, inflammation goes up, our immune system goes down, our cellular health diminishes, poor cells leading to poor tissues, leading to poor organs, leading to poor systems. And that's how you have poor performance. That's how you have brain fog. That's how you get chronic symptoms. That's how you got chronic disease. And so it was really going through the process myself, understanding that I was potentially indoctrinated in such a way from even elementary school. I don't think we're teaching humans how to be humans and how to master their own gifts of expression. We're told to sit down, learn things that might not light you up. And as long as you could follow that route of being a good conforming person, that you would get to a place in life that you will be respected. But unfortunately, so many of us go through life where we're not the most authentic version of ourselves. And I think it shows up in our mental health and certainly in our physical health as well.
I'd actually love to start with that mental health side and the mindset, right? There's this one path, and I think of your story. My father was a pediatric cardiologist and kind of went on his path and then introduced him to a slow carb diet. And he lost 65 pounds in a year and started running half marathons, transformed his life. And he said, basically, I had to unlearn everything they taught me in med school about nutrition and put thousands of his patients saying, look, what they're showing us in the food pyramid, all this is just lies. And so you could say nutrition, but it's really a mindset. You have to start with that mindset. And so you had a certain wake up call as you're treating patients, as you're saying, okay, here, I'm treating all these diseases. Wait, I'm living these diseases. How did you at that time transition that mindset over?
Well, it was certainly a journey. And this is a journey I continuously go through. There is not a single day that goes by that an older version, an older mindset creeps in and judges the outside world and thinks that it's in danger somehow. Anxious that my bank account is dropping, somebody cutting me off on the freeway and me reacting to that. I really do believe life is a blessing, life is a gift, and every moment is taught to give us a gift of something that makes us very happy, or a gift to give us an opportunity to grow, to learn, to become more resilient. This isn't something we're naturally taught. And so neuroscientists, as I started to understand more in the longevity space, I dove into the science of kind of spirituality and of our consciousness. And what we're starting to learn is there's a part of our brain called the default mode network. It's a very primitive part of our brain and nervous system. And when we are young, it just downloads information from our parents, from our teachers. Yes. It actually causes inflammation when the default mode network is overactive. And so it downloads all these things from all the different sources out there. It makes sense of how the world works, where we fit in the world. And since it's our survival mechanism, it's always looking for what can hurt us. It's intimately tied to our amygdala, our fear center, and our hippocampus, our memory centers. And so it remembers past traumas. And so you've got basically this operating system in our brain constantly looking for what's wrong. And when we're children, not feeling safe, not being loved, not feeling accepted, we will go out of our way to adapt, to conform. And so we'll develop these traumatic responses, which might include people pleasing, seeking success, keeping busy, avoidance, aggression. They become the seat of our ego. And throughout our life, unless we're aware of it, we're making choices from this unconscious, conditioned autopilot and survival mode of the brain. The version of myself that didn't feel like I was enough, that didn't feel like I was worthy. And I think, every time I share this story, so many people say that they have some version of that. It's a very human story. And then they become inauthentic versions of themselves. And when they live life through that lens, you are making choices from this place of I'm worthy, I'm not enough. And for me, I was constantly trying to strive to become the top physician, to get the most patients, to get the car, to get the house. And in doing so, wasn't worried about my sleep, didn't worry about my exercise. I was eating the crap that they fed us in the hospital. My relationships were crap because I was always transactional, and I was always living for me and rather than living for other people. And so unconsciously, I was making these choices. And those choices actually created an energetic environment around my cells. And we know now through epigenetics that our DNA isn't fixed. So it's not programmed to do certain things. It's constantly listening to the cues around its environment. And we could make conscious choices that create a very lively environment for ourselves, or we can make unconscious choices from that ego space that makes us feel like we're in anxiety and stress and that we got a saber-toothed tiger running at us 24/7 all the time. And that actually turns on the genes that raises inflammation in our body. Those shut downs the genes that give us our immune system. And that basically sets the stage for chronic symptoms and chronic disease. And so it was uncovering the work of the program I was living in, the stories, the limiting beliefs that had me live a life that created disease in my body. And it was slowly peeling the onion that I continuously do every single day. Every single day, I catch myself comparing myself to other people. Every single day that, I find myself angry that somebody's treating me with such malice. And the key there is to, have the gift of awareness. And once you have awareness, then you have choice. And when you start making new choices over that old programming, you can basically rewire your entire body and nervous system and your energetic state for you to turn on the genes of longevity, performance, and optimal health.
And on this, I mean, you brought up a few times, right? Like you, like I would think most, if not all of our listeners like me, are not Buddha, right? So you can intellectually know this.
Yeah.
And still the default, because it's what natural is, you find yourself in that place.
Yeah.
And so it, I believe, becomes more of a practice of getting better at noticing and noticing sooner to pull yourself out of that default. And so now, given where you are in your journey, do you have a daily or weekly practice to help with that noticing, help with that awareness?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, as we're talking now, this evening, I'm going to fly over to Bali. I'm going to spend about a week or so learning deeper spiritual work and working with some energetic masters that could help remove maybe some of the stuck traumas and programs out of me. And I think that's one way to accelerate things. Some people have psychedelic journeys. Some people have strong breath work things where what we actually see on fMRI machines where they quiet down the default. And if you quiet down the default, you are more in touch of who you are as an essence, as a soul. And then if you have those experiences, you can remind yourself, particularly when you get triggered, what the truth really is. So I find that to be helpful. However, if you haven't had time to have these big retreats or a psychedelic journey or any of that stuff, you also might remember there are times in flow. There are times where time slows down, whether you're out in nature doing something you really enjoy, or you're just in a meditative and relaxed space after meditation or breath work, that you're like, wow, the thing that was just triggering me is not that. And you have an opportunity to almost define who you are. Are you joy? Are you generous? All these things here. So I think one, developing that awareness and developing the practice is very important. I have this technique called impact. Now, during breath work, during meditation that I'll do at times, there are things and words and beliefs that I use as mantras. And the three things that I repeat over to myself is I am joy, I am love, and I am playful. And I try to come back to these things that this is who I am. That is my I am. Then I've got this phrase called impact. I am, and it's in my book, Thrive State. I am PACT. So I am, pause, awareness, choice, and then take action. So every moment I have, and I would almost build this into sort of my day, when I walk underneath a doorway, before I step over, I go impact. I pause. I could take 10 deep breaths in through my nose, out through my mouth, do some 4-7-8 breathing. And then I have awareness. Am I being triggered right now? Where's that trigger coming from? I have that awareness. Then C, I choose. What do I choose? I choose my I am. I choose love. I choose playfulness. I choose presence. And then I immediately take action. I'm like, okay, I'm going to put myself in this space. And when I cross this space, no matter what's happening on the other side of this, I am love and I am playful. This is how you can build in different micro moments throughout the day for you to remember to be conscious of who you are rather than, have the default mode. I use this every time I get triggered. I remember there was a moment, my daughter had a traumatic birth, and I remember being very angry at the hospital for like screwing things up. She had a cord wrap around her neck and ankle. I wasn't able to see her the entire time because of COVID. And then when that happened, I was pissed off at the hospital and at the staff. And I take myself through this process. I pause, 10 deep breaths. I have the awareness that I'm reacting, that I feel helpless. And I feel that in my body. Then I choose a belief this time. I choose the belief that everything's happening for me, not to me. And then I take action. And to be honest, I didn't know what action to take at the time. And so I just asked, how's this happening for me? And I remember the nurse handing my daughter to me for the first time after I asked that question. And I got a chance to look at her. And I wasn't quite sure if she was going to have brain damage from having her cord wrapped around her neck. But I just remember feeling immense love for this human being that's alive right now. And I just remember at that moment, like, health complication or not, or who she is, she's absolutely worthy of my love. Absolutely. Just because she is who she is. And in that moment, I just recognized, wow, how silly of me to ever think that I was not enough or that I'm not love. And I remember just some wave of healing that just washed some of that away. And don't get me wrong, I still carry those not enough feelings every now and then, but I could catch myself and I can make new choices. And so that would be the number one, I would say, habit that I've instilled multiple times throughout the day. And then I would include it every week and every quarter. You can ask yourself, impact. And really, it comes down to who you want to be. And that's is something that I find to be most important. Who we be actually creates our health, our relationships, and probably everything we want to build in life.
Yeah, I mean, everything about that is amazing. I have a calendar reminder twice a day for 478 breath to just kind of pull back and build that awareness. And I'm curious on your take on it, because what I find is maybe 50%, maybe even more now. I don't know. It's more going through the motions. I'll be checking email while I do it. I'll be trying to eat right while I do it, which it could be perfect, right? To do right before you eat, to build that awareness and that presence, and then just get really in it versus, oh, I'll just do it like while I'm shoveling food in my mouth. And one side of me says, hey, look, even if I'm 40%, it's better than the 0% I was before. So like this is progress. This has helped me get it there. But I don't know if you have any tips or practices you use to not make it rote or going through the motions, to say, no, like I'm really going to be here for this and take this seriously. Because the way you describe it, I mean, it can have real dramatic impact. And I just wouldn't want to lose that over time.
Yeah, no, it does have a real dramatic impact. And I think just recognizing what that can potentially feel like, to give yourself that presence, I think is a beautiful thing. I think so many people in the biohacking space these days recognize that there are many hacks, and the type A high performing individual is like, how do I squeeze as many of these hacks in the day? How do I meditate while in a red light sauna and all these things so that I can crush my performance? And I think there are certainly some positives to that. But again, what is the consciousness that's driving that performance that makes you feel the need, I got to attack all these things at once? It takes some time for me to go, oh, okay, potentially it's just another upgraded version of the default mode, seeking to conquer, to succeed, and to do better. That's robbing me from the presence and the gift that I can give myself in this moment. And the more I have awareness of that, the more I can just say, all right, I don't have to have 5, I don't even have to have 10 minutes. In 30 seconds or in a minute, can I give that to myself? Honestly, truthfully, can I give that to myself? And the shorter you make those times, the less inclined you are to try to just squeeze it in. Make it really, really short. But when you're there, just like, hey, this is the time you're really, truly, truly giving yourself the gift of being present in life and driving everything else away. And that really, regulates your nervous system in a beautiful way. And what I can say is, if you give yourself that little bit of time, whether it be 30 seconds, a minute, I guarantee you, your performance, your clarity, your ability to innovate and be creative for the task that you're going to do after that is going to be amazing.
Yeah. I am eating all this up. I'm sorry. This is so good. You referenced before, right, that you're type A, you're doing all the work, you're doing everything, and you weren't focused on a number of things, and sleep was one of those. And I think back, being the child of 2 physicians, there was a time in my life, my father literally said to me, hey, look, you can train your body not to need sleep. Like through residency, all this, you can do it not to need it. And then you read Dr. Matthew Walker's book or these others are like, no, actually you can't, right? Like if you could train it out, probably evolution would have. This is an incredibly important part of being an animal, right? Not just a human, but any animal needs this. So what is your sleep practice like now that you came to that realization of, look, I was mortgaging this and now I understand its core importance to a healthy and fulfilled life?
Well, I'll have to tell you and be honest, I haven't fully mastered this. I thought I did, but now that I'm traveling a lot all over the world, different time zones, it's become more of a challenge. But what I can say is this, that our ability to sleep well at night really comes down to, giving our body the signals of safety when we go to sleep. And that starts way from the beginning. All right. So in the morning when I wake up, I try to go outside, get some morning sunlight. And so I'm getting the, rays in my body, on my skin. And that allows us to reset our circadian rhythm so that our body goes, okay, timer, boom, this is morning. We know that, 16 hours from now, we're probably going to try to, get back to bed at some point. It resets our whole circadian rhythm around that. Throughout the day, including those impact moments, including some meditation. I love yoga nidra, very free thing that you can do. Huberman has a couple of practices. There's a lot of other practitioners you can get for free at YouTube. But in just 10 to 20 minutes, you can learn a practice that allows you to combine breathing and mindfulness. And it's like a super powerful power nap. I include that throughout the day. And I do that because it allows your system, you're going on the track, even in the, I don't watch racing, but when you watch the racing, they all have their pit stops where they have to change their tire and just reset. And we need that throughout the day because otherwise it's going to build that all up into the evening. So I make sure I include a couple of those things throughout the day. I'm making sure that, I'm not taking in any more caffeine past 2 p.m. I hardly drink anymore, but alcohol is one of those things that even if you have before you go to bed, you think you're going to go to bed, but you're not going to get that deeper REM sleep when you get there. And then finally, later in the evening, it's like really allowing yourself to get into a routine where you're winding down. And one of the hacks that I do myself is almost sort of creating like, what do I want to dream of? What do I want to, have my body and mind like help process in the evening and create something where I'm looking forward to sleep. I could tell you that 5 years ago, every time I went into bed, I would be dreading going to sleep because I know I'm going to be in bed, not being able to fall asleep. The strange thing was like, I would be watching TV just to kind of distract my mind and I could fall asleep to that. But the minute I turn the TV off and try to actually go to bed, like the mind would turn on again. And so I almost needed that distraction. And so that's kind of why it's so difficult for us to be able to go to sleep. Our default mode, whether it be the things that are happening at work, in our relationships, are constantly in our mind. And if we don't allow our nervous system to regulate throughout the day, it's going to be very difficult because what's happening is you're telling your body, is it safe to go to bed? Because there might be a saber-tooth tiger that's going to come get me.
And what is that unwinding process? So I get the morning and throughout the day to kind of not get behind the 8 ball. But then what time does it start? Like last meal, that kind of thing?
I will try to have my last meal by 6 p.m. and not eat any later than that. Or sometimes I might just skip dinner, because I find myself not getting the deep rest that I need if I'm eating something late at night. It also means that by 6 p.m., I'm really spending that time connecting. Connecting with other people is a beautiful time. It raises our oxytocin level. That actually relaxes our body, drops our nervous system down. And I'm not trying to answer any emails. I'm off devices. I'm really trying to spend quality time there. I do a nice little sort of meditation, whether it be a short breathwork session or some meditations that I have in one of my courses. I'm doing that, and that really kind of primes my body. And then enjoying that hack, using a little bit of time where you're journaling, you're writing down the things you did during the day. You're writing down things that you were grateful for during the day, and then kind of what you want to get done tomorrow. What does that do? That actually just like puts everything that might be in your mind that's left over onto a piece of paper, so you're not perseverating it before you're going to bed. I like to use a little bit of lavender mist before I go to bed. I'm making sure that the bed is a nice little sanctuary where I'm like, oh, this is going to be my peaceful space. And I'm really treating it as something that I look forward to doing versus like, oh God, I got to get sleep. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to perform. And it becomes this thing that you have to do versus this thing that it is just beautiful to do and that you can create a beautiful space for yourself doing it.
And do you use any eye masks or mattress cooling technology? Because in my space, I create all of the things.
So we have an Uller pad. We use different kind of eye masks, but we've lost so many of them. But we use that. We used to have a weighted blanket that we don't use anymore, but that's basically it.
Yeah, and then do you do, because there's so many options out there on sleep supplementation, do you use anything for sleep supplementation?
Not anymore. I used to supplement with a little magnesium, a little glycine. I've tried some phosphatidylserine and different things that are out there, but that I would probably say supplementation for me is something that is quite cyclical, and I'm not I'm just not good at taking pills regularly.
So outside of sleep, are there any that you're currently taking?
Yes. So I find with mitochondrial health, a couple supplements that I find is really beneficial for me. Ubiquinol, that's basically the active form of CoQ10, and certainly anyone on a statin should be taking this. And a new one that's come out is MitoPure, which is basically a mitochondrial supplement that increases mitochondrial biogenesis, mitochondrial autophagy. On occasion, I basically take a multivitamin. I'll also take some fish oil. I'm constantly low in vitamin D, and I find most people that I test is low in vitamin D, so I end up doing that as well. And then on top of that, I would just sort of cycle through what I'm feeling my body needs and what my labs are telling me.
Okay. Do you supplement with protein at all, or do you get it all in your diet?
Yeah, it's not a regular supplementation. I would sometimes take my protein. Actually, Timeline Nutrition or MitoPure actually has a whey protein that actually also has their MitoPure that's in it. And I'll sometimes include a little bit of collagen with my coffee in the morning. But, I take a good amount of protein throughout the day.
Yeah.
So
there are two questions that are kind of more selfish and personal that I have on that. Because you mentioned the mitochondrial autophagy. As a physician in this space, what is your thought on fasting, and not just intermittent, but more prolonged fasts, and on autophagy and the benefits or not of that?
this is a great question. And I really do feel people need to understand the nuances of doing hormetic practices. Our human body is an ecosystem. In our ecosystem, and basically all of life we see are different ecosystems, whether it be single cell organisms, whether we see nature, whether we even see in business, we've got these ecosystems. These ecosystems are made up of individual units. They all interact with each other that form a healthy ecosystem. Now, if the ecosystem is healthy, if you challenge it, so we take these amoebas, right? These single cell organisms. If that amoeba is healthy, if you were to stress it, say you change the pH of the environment, say you take away nutrients or you change the temperature, if it is healthy, it will adapt to that stress over time and it will create processes in the body to make those amoebas stronger, more resilient, and they live longer. So intermittent pressure or stress in a healthy ecosystem over time will lead it to growth and resilience. That's the process of hormesis. So the key factors there is apply stress, but also make sure you've got a healthy ecosystem. If that amoeba was not very healthy, any type of stress will tip it over. Okay. So if we start to look at some of these hormetic practices that we have in the biohacking space, one being fasting, one being cold therapy or sauna,
or even exercise, right?
100% exercise. So all those are stresses. If you are not focused on the health pillars and you are already stressed out, then a HIIT exercise is going to knock you over and you're not going to do very well because your body doesn't have the adaptive capacity to handle that stress to make you stronger. That goes the same for fasting. And it goes for the same for and I think for women, their whole cycle is changes their entire physiology. There are going to be certain times where your body needs more resources, particularly during menses, and you shouldn't be doing any high intensity interval training or heavy fasting during that time because your body just needs to relax. And then you can start to ramp up. And that goes the same for everybody in terms of how much stress are you going through in your body now. So some of the prolonged fasting I think is great, but if you are a high level CEO and you're going through a bunch of stress already, that's not something I would necessarily prescribe for that person. So in saying that, as it pertains to fasting in general, our body has already adapted mechanisms. Every single organism throughout the world is able to have mechanisms to adapt when there's food and energetic resources around and when they don't have it around. And that intermittent stress actually allows adaptive capacity like autophagy, which is getting rid of old stuff and building in new things. And that's actually something that has that organism, develop mechanisms to live longer and become more resilient. And so there's many benefits of fasting. And so we were not adapted to be, eating all the time throughout the day and the junk that we are eating. So I do think that narrower time windows are more likely how humans were designed to be. And then some occasional longer term fasts are, I think, beneficial. And it's almost sort of spiritual in a way. We take a look at the spiritual practices that have happened throughout history. People are kind of praying. People aren't going out and working their ass off during their longer fasts. Again, you're just adding more stress throughout the body. And so, everybody's a little bit different, but I want people to understand the context of how you should approach fasting and these hormetic practices.
That's personally very helpful. I used to do 4, now I do 2 5-day fasts a year. And so I'm going to think more through the timing versus, hey, this is just a week on what else is going on.
No, yeah. If you're doing those 5 days fast, I mean, I think work on the pillars of spirituality, who you are, how you want to, how you want to grow as a human being, not challenge yourself too physically during that time. Certainly exercise. I wouldn't be doing HIIT and all that stuff, but, really kind of create that time. I think, the traditions that have these longer fasts really have the spiritual component where they're not exerting themselves so hard in other times.
And so before we move off this, and not to jump into the religious wars and nutrition, but when you think about food, because we talked about these rich foods that come in, separate from supplementation, how do you think about fueling your body, and what does that look like over the course of the day or a week?
Great question. So I've actually met somebody that's created this technology that's been super amazing. It's called SHAE, SHAE.ai. And basically what they're able to do is take a snapshot of your body and using 16 different type of sciences, reverse engineer how this body formed from the DNA and all the life experiences, all the hormones that you've gone through to create exactly your body. And so it basically can reverse engineer what your body type is, what your personality is, the diseases that you're prone to, and the type of foods that you should be eating. And so now I have slightly changed sort of my food preferences based on this, and I've noticed a dramatic response. Prior to SHAE, for me, my approach is I just want to fuel my body with the best nutrients and ingredients. And for me, it was just clean meats, clean proteins, and vegetables. And I try to stay, I've got a history of diabetes, so I'm staying away from simple starches, processed foods, seed oils as best as I can. And I could probably say for anyone, if that's going to be your general approach, it's probably going to be pretty good. For certain people, you'll notice that certain diets you can try as a therapeutic type of approach to maybe decrease inflammation and autoimmune disorders for a time. So they're like kind of elimination type diets. But that's kind of how I approached it previously. But now that I've got SHAE, I'm recognizing, there are certain vegetables that are probably going to be better for me than not. And I've really noticed changes in my body. So it's a super exciting technology. And I think they're going to make a bigger splash in the years coming. And I can't wait for that to hit the ground, because it's going to give us a real new access to personalized health when it comes to, nutrition, our sleep, and all these things.
That's really exciting. I'm going to definitely check that out after this. Well, so on the fitness side, so you mentioned, if you're going under other stresses, you have to be careful on what you're doing on that front. What does your personal fitness routine look like now?
Yeah. So I keep mine relatively simple, and I would like to include a little bit more flexibility with yoga. But currently, the two main things that I use are resistance training, weightlifting. And I find that to be probably, one of the most important things as we consider longevity, because sarcopenia, or muscle loss with age, is the, super associated with a lot of accidents, growing up, or as we get older, a lot of falls and things of that nature, and people not being able to recover. And it's also a marker for an earlier death if you've got less muscle mass. So I focus on resistance training. And the other thing was, before I used to have some high intensity interval training that was really a stress on my body, but I've discovered a biohack. The BBC actually had a documentary where they were talking about reduced exertion, high intensity training. So that's like a HIIT exercise, but what's the minimum level of HIIT that you can do? So what you would do is you would stress your body out, and this actually mimics what things were like for our ancestors when you saw like saber-tooth tiger and you're like, holy crap, and you're running away from the saber-tooth tiger. But once it's gone, you can finally relax. And we're finding that our ability to go through these powerful bursts and then getting into a relaxation mode actually has huge benefits for our body, particularly our mitochondria. This increases VO2 max, which is our ability to efficiently extract and use oxygen in our body. And that's actually a major marker for longevity. We've seen, people lose weight on it. We've seen people decrease their blood pressure. And the one technology that's out there that I found, I've actually found to be quite game changer, and I wish I could carry it around with me everywhere I go, is the Carol bike, CAROL. And basically, it's a bike that just mimics what I just talked about. You'll be cruising around for about 2 or so minutes. You'll be sprinting or do an all-out effort, and then use AI technology to adjust the resistance so that you're actually doing that effort safely. You do that for 20 seconds. You're resting for about 2 minutes, another 20 seconds, and you're done in about 5 minutes. And you could just do this, 3 to 4 times a week. And they're noticing, again, people have increases in their VO2 max. They are losing weight. You've got improved insulin sensitivity, and all the great biomarkers that are there. So those are the two main ones that I'm doing, but I would like to incorporate more type of stability and flexibility exercises as well.
And so the frequency of those, so is it 3 or 4 days of the HIIT and then 3 days of resistance?
Yeah, I'm typically about 4 to 5 days where I'm incorporating one or both of them.
Okay. Yeah, I guess when you're doing 5 minutes, you could do it on the back end.
Exactly. I went to the gym for about 30 minutes. I knew I had this conversation I had to do, and then I've got the bike in my garage, and then like 5 minutes in, boom, it's easy.
Yeah, that's incredible. I came across it, Dave Asprey's new Smarter Not Harder,
Yeah.
The Carol bike, and then me, because my normal is once a week I try to get the Norwegian HIIT, right? Like 5 by 4 minutes on super hard, and then 4 minutes off, whether it's on an erg or a bike or swimming. Right? That's my go-to. So like, okay, let me go try this. But of course, it being me, I would do the 20 or 30 seconds, and then I take 3 or 4 minutes off. But then I did it for 40 minutes, right? Like I didn't do it just the twice. I just kept repeating.
Yeah.
But not on the Carol bike. I just had a normal bike to do it. Yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, just all these things we're learning. How long have you been doing that?
I've been doing that for about a couple months. They sent me a bike, and I was like, this is great. Now, you can do this just sprinting or sprinting up a hill. And so that's what I was doing before. Although I would probably say on 2 separate occasions, I pulled different parts of my body when I was doing that. So one of the great things about the carol bike is because it's AI assisted, it's going to ramp you up in such a way where you're less prone to injury. And certainly,
Yeah.
if you're an older person, that's great. But yeah, I've injured myself twice. That put me out for a couple of weeks from doing that previously.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's an important point too on any of this in terms of not letting perfect be the enemy of good and pushing so much, because it's, as I understand it, the decline, especially in physical health, isn't a slope. It's kind of these step changes. So it's after an injury takes you out of commission for a while, you end up with the loss of muscle, all this.
Like a new baseline that's like,
Yeah. And it's that much harder to get back to where you were before. So that kind of safety procedure in place makes a lot of sense. So you have the Carol bike at home. For the resistance training, do you have all that stuff at home as well, or do you go to a gym, or how do
No,
you?
I go to a gym. I mean, for me, so one of the things I've also discovered with Shay is we've got sort of different personality types. So the thing is, the whole thing with Shay is form tells you your function. So take, for example, if you were to take any animal and you saw an animal, you saw a wing and you're like, oh, this animal flies. Or you took another look and you saw an animal have webbed feet. Oh, this animal must swim. And so we are designed exactly the same way. And based on kind of how my body is, I am a specific health type that's a connector. And so for me, I thrive in social environments. I am in my flow state when I start connecting with people. Different people are different when it comes to this. And so for me, when I'm around other people, I tend to do a lot better and I feel a lot better. And I notice this as well is when I'm at home just working, at home alone or even workouts on my own, I'm just like, I'm kind of dreading it versus like being out there. So this is really, Shay has really allowed me to have a better understanding as to how I function best in the world. And I find myself just more in flow states following their recommendations.
On that social side, I mean, was that something you more deliberately started doing after Shay, or?
Yeah, I always knew I flourished in social settings, but then like after a while as an entrepreneur, there's going to be times where you got to put your head down and work. And then you feel like you've got to work a certain way because you hear other entrepreneurs and how they do it. And you're like, oh no, this doesn't feel right. I'm burned out more. And you kind of don't really think about it. But then with Shay, it kind of tells you exactly what your geniuses are, how you tend to show up with other people, how to best communicate with other people. So they've got very interesting verticals like Shay for relationships, Shay for parenting, because we're all developed differently. And if you start to understand who you are as a human being and how your body was constructed, you can, make sort of better choices to you put yourself in states that raise your energy and put you in flow states versus draining who you are and draining your energetic life force.
The social engagement one's an interesting one, though. The most recent global well-being report, it cited that people who felt socially connected in doing their fitness activities had 20% higher well-being scores, right? It's a thing. And if you felt lonely, right, your risk of dementia goes up 50%. It's the equivalent of having alcoholism or obesity or smoking 15 cigarettes a day. And so even, maybe I'm wrong, but even if she would say, hey, you're a super, super social person, I mean, we evolved to be these very social creatures that kind of need each other. And so it seems like you should be getting some amount in there, some 6 hours a day or certain number of physical touches, because we're not meant to be these isolated creatures.
Exactly. We are meant to be connected beings, but how we connect and how much we need the connection is going to differ for people. So this is what I found very interesting as well. It's like Shay started to do some research on, for example, high intensity interval training. And, across the board, we don't see the same type of people respond to high intensity interval training. So this is a great hormesis, but it was just if your health type and body type is such where that's not where you're going to get the bang for your buck, then those resources are wasted with things like that. And it would be a very interesting study to go, yes, we need to feel connected, but person A might need more group people, more physical touch to feel that connection versus other people, can feel connected just by, you know, uh, light conversations and they might not need it so much. but the idea is we do need connection across the board. How much we need it and how we best engage in it to get that connection, I think it's going to differ, which is really, really cool about what Shay is telling us.
Yeah. And so, one of the ways you do it, it sounds like you, instead of just working out at home and it's your own personal, you're going out to a gym. So you're engaging with the community, with other people there. Are there other practices that you had in place already or have put in place since learning that to make sure you're getting that social connection across your life?
No, this is actually one of my top priorities. I realize that the connections that I have are probably not the type of connections that I know I have when I go to these events that I speak at, where there's all this, heart centered people that I'm around. My current lifestyle is such where I am on the road a lot. It's very difficult. And so I want to make a more conscious effort to kind of start building some of that, in my life. And I would probably say, at the time being, I like to create a team environment and atmosphere that really reflects that for myself. And so, if you start to understand that you are kind of more of an extroverted person, that your energy is lifted with other people, how do you, create masterminds? How do you create meal opportunities, exercise opportunities, where you're working on these 5 other pillars, but you're actually elevating that social connection piece while you're doing it, and you're not doing it in isolation.
Yeah. And so, one is that mindset of just recognizing, being conscious of it. Hey, this is the thing. If I'm going to go work on fitness, let me do it with other people. If I'm going to have a meal, let me do it with other people. Let me engage. Are there any tools or specific practices other than, hey, this is something I am going to focus on and make sure I'm incorporating, that you use to make it easier or more effective or hold yourself to account on that front?
Yes. So I try to cut out some small talk now, and I'm a little bit more intentional with the type of conversations I have with people. And two of the things I try to lead with is this. So connection is not something that connection's a feeling. It's not being physically close to someone, right? My friend Keith Ferrazzi, who is a global connection expert, says that only 50% of Americans feels like they've got someone that's got their back. And get this, 60% of those are people who are married. And so you can be physically next to another person, but still not feel connected. So connection is a feeling, and how do we start to build that connection is building trust with another person. And so there are 3 things underlying trust, which is feeling safe, which is feeling love, and then feeling accepted. And then, so how, as an individual, can you start to cultivate this stuff, even when you've got different personalities that are out there? One is really just being generous. And you could be generous with your time. You could be generous with your money. You could be generous with your advice. You could be generous with even forgiving someone, you know? And as you give without getting anything in return, a couple of cool things happen. Number one, you turn off the default mode network. So many people, say, how do you succeed in life? And so many people say giving. Well, giving is something that actually works so much is because you're quieting down the part of you that is ego-based and bringing up the part of you that's soul-based. And it's actually good for your health at the same time. So if we can give generously without, expecting anything in return, we start to build that trust with other people. And then the conversations that we have with other people, well, human beings, we all have our dreams and we all have our struggles. And if we could start being a little bit more authentic and sharing that with the people that we're around, sharing it with people that want to know your dreams, sharing and being vulnerable to be able to say, geez, you know what? I kind of feel like a failure because last month I didn't make X and X, or my relationship is currently, very difficult with my partner, and X, Y, and Z are showing up with me, or I'm really afraid because so and so, my bonus starter is starting a new school, and we know the type of transitional things that she has to deal with me, being in her life. So these type of things, if we can lead with generosity and we become very vulnerable and authentic with our communication, we start to build that trust. And so we can do that virtually. I lead organizations and teams on how to start to build more of this with each other. But just having more touch points. It could be virtual where you could deeply feel connected. So being virtual doesn't take away connection. Connection is something that we build, and energetically we could feel that as long as we lead with generosity and vulnerability.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful how this has come so full circle, because I think we started very much at the beginning of kind of your personal journey and realizing how inward looking was not helpful. And you had to think, how do I engage with the world? How do I put myself out there? And with what you shared today, the work you're consistently doing, whether it's on stage, through your programs, through your practice, I just can't thank you enough. I have absolutely loved this conversation and personally taken a lot out of it. Before we go, we've covered a lot. And, this isn't something you came to overnight, right? This is a process and a journey. And so whereas somebody might hear and be overwhelmed and say, hey, look, you don't have to put everything into place today. Where would you suggest, if they're just getting started, what is that first step for people that you would recommend?
The first step is a breath, and just sort of asking yourself and knowing and that you are love. I think if we could truly, truly feel that, that's the most authentic version of us. And if we can be love and know that we are love, the thing that follows, whatever action we take from that energetic space, is a space that's going to allow us to evolve into a better, healthier, higher performing version of ourselves. So much of my entire life was living through a lens that I am not love and that I got to go chase. And that completely shifted the energetic around me. So I think two of the most important choices that we can make that will not only shift your own life, but shift the life of the planet is, one, love yourself, but then also love each other. We didn't get into this today, but how I feel our human body is like made up of all these different cells is basically how humanity is. Humanity is an organism made up of us as individuals. And I currently think humanity is sick right now with the wars that are going on, with the name calling. We've got autoimmune disease happening in our humanity. We've got cancers in our human body where certain cells are taking more than they actually are giving. It's a really cool analogy. But if we could start to really understand that we are love, we're all connected with each other, and we can love each other, that's going to transform your health. That's going to transform your longevity. That's going to transform the planet as well.
That analogy, when you say it, it seems so obvious. And the epigenetic side too. If we all have the genes in us on the light and the dark, yep. And depending on the environment we have around us and we create, we can turn either one on. And so we have it right there.
Did you say that?
Yeah, that's... Man, Dr. V, this is golden nuggets left and right here. This is amazing. Okay, before we go, so we talked a lot around health and you had unhealthy time, but do you have a guilty pleasure, or maybe it's guilt-free, but something that people would look from the outside and say, hey, that's not exactly super healthy?
Oh, yeah. I've got tons of those. And why I have that currently, and I don't know how to perceive this otherwise. And I think I'm going to really work on creating more food options for other people. But I've got a daughter who's 3.5 that is exposed to, ice cream and exposed to candy and things like that. And I am a sucker when we walk past something and she really wants something and she really wants to dive into something. And just to see the joy in her eyes when we say yes to ice cream and be able to kind of share that moment with her, I'm a hell yes for that. And so, I've got probably a sweet tooth, and I tell myself, look, we all have some adaptive capacity. And if we're going to make choices, make some conscious choices. And if I'm going to enjoy some dessert, if I'm going to enjoy some ice cream, if I'm going to enjoy some sugar, let that be something that's really damn good and enjoy the crap out of it, rather than, shaming yourself and putting yourself through guilt that you're having that, or shaming somebody else for doing that, even though they're in the health space. And so I've got lots of different versions of that is there, but I would probably say that the choices are a lot more conscious now. And at the end of the day, we are human. And I'm going to enjoy the human experience as best as I can. And some occasional ice cream and chocolate with my daughter is something that I'm going to continue to do.
Yeah, because what's the point of adding the years to our life if we're not also adding that life to our years?
Absolutely.
And love the way you frame that. Well, Dr. V, this again has been absolutely phenomenal. I cannot thank you enough for everything you're sharing, and I'm excited to debrief after this Bali trip.
No, it's going to be an immensely deep work, because I truly believe when we look at the people with the blue zones, it's based when you step into these environments, it's an energetic shift. And I think that energy that we feel, that we create around, is also the energy we're giving ourselves. And if people want to find out more about this, actually learn a blueprint, we got courses on our site, mythrivestate.com/pro, where you can learn basically how to shift the energy in your life. I think it's going to be very helpful for a lot of people.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have those on your Lively page in the show notes for people to easily access all that, because it's like you said, it's just a lot of wisdom, a lot of benefit to people, as long as you're willing to engage and do the work. So Thank you for putting it out in the world. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Home of Healthspan podcast. And remember, you can always find the products, practices, and routines mentioned by today's guests, as well as many other Healthspan role models on alively.com. Enjoy a lively day.